And so another one of these videos when I'm going to focus 80% of my focus on where I put my foot and 20% on what I'm actually saying in the introduction. But I guess I need to find a better path. Well, I did not plan to do one today because I realized my coffee consumption went through the roof and I had to diminish it a bit. And so I'm training my 2-hour exercise this morning, and without that initial boost, which I've done before, but yeah, I thought I'll probably not make another one of these. But anyway, so when I was on my run after the gym, my creativity started to sparkle, and I actually thought that, well, there's actually a topic that is very super simple and probably the most significant, important cultural sort of, what was that? Some type of animal creeping under a stone. Anyway, most sort of, sign of sort of a decadence in Western culture, and I mean, could say sort of most important thing in any culture should be. And I think and when I went down that rabbit hole, I realized my endorphins from the run actually compensated terrifically well for the absence of caffeine for some weird reason. So bumped in so many ideas that I started this video with an angst of realizing I would not be able to remember all the amazing parts that my brain came up with as ideas. But here we go anyway. So, well, the first thing then that I realized that this could be a sort of a 2-minute video, but it's still so important. Now, I've touched upon it earlier, but in different aspects, so to speak, and it is basically just about the thing about life and ambition and doing something with life and not settling for but there's a certain aspect of it that I think is easy to forget, and I think is, in my humble opinion, it's actually sort of crucial for actually making that happen that you have sort of as a vision of. But I mean, the first step is obviously something that I'll already touch upon about not settling for, I mean, you have a sort of a duty of trying to achieve something great and heroic, if you will. I mean, because the more good you can do for this world, the better, right? So, and why would a life without that ambition be inspiring? I think it's quite obvious. But the second thing, and this is easier to say the younger you are, because I mean, obviously that's the case, but I do think there is an immense value of thinking that you're actually going to achieve it, that you will achieve it. That is, that the odds are in your favor. I mean, that because I mean, I really do think in the sort of self-fulfilling prophecy of what you want to do, and I mean, and it's a hard sort of battle of the mind, so to speak, of rational thought to balance that, because you should be humble. I mean, being humble is a sign of, I mean, intelligence in some sense, and it's a sign of just moral respect for other people, but it's still true that if you're not believe you can do it, if you don't think that you're actually going to do it, and this is also different depending on what sort of goal you have, because usually people say it's better to have a goal you can measure or something that's quite clear. Like, for example, if you're as ambitious as a scientist to get the Nobel Prize, I mean, it's quite clear if you got it or not. but that's, I don't say that's the most important. I'm not even sure that the evaluation is perfect at all times for the Nobel Prize, but just saying as an example, it's quite clear, did you do it or did you not? And I mean, it can be a good thing to have those kind of goals. That's why they're pushing, many people push for like have measurable goals, and like for example, it's a good thing that the perhaps that the Americans had the ambition of putting someone on the moon before the end of the decade, as I think it was, with the side consequences of some of the most heroic people of that nation losing their lives in the effort before that was achieved, and sadly their names is not as remembered as those who actually were first on the moon, but that's another topic. And so usually a time limit or some types of but what I want to get at, that's not the main thing here. I mean, it can be sort of that's sort of a sad consequence if one has a cut and clear goal that you achieve it or not, and you can't sort of how should you put it? If you say I will do it, it's quite clear if it's probable or not, or something like that. But like for me, for example, I've always had quite clear. It's not the topic of this discussion either. I'm not going to explain exactly what I'm achieving, but basically I'm trying, as all reasonably honorable people do, they try to achieve as much good as they can in their lives, and the more ambitious the better. So, but it's not as that broad. I have obviously a plan that's more cut and clear, but it's not that necessarily. It's more about how much of an impact, a good impact you can have. And then in that case, it's not something that's measurable necessarily. I mean, you could perhaps I should measure it, I don't know, but I mean, it's more of a sort of a gradual thing. How much are you going in that direction of the vision that you have? And so, yeah, that's just the nature of how it can differ depending what sort of goals and you have and what type of where you're striving. That it can be, and it's probably easier if you do not have something that's exactly clear that this is achieved or it's not achieved. It's sort of a gradual. Then it's easier to say, well, I will do it. It's going to be done. But like for me, for example, what I want to do in this world, I've mainly been focused on the business side, doing something there, and but I mean, there are many things changing in this world, right? So who knows how you incorporate your ambitions and endeavors, but another thing is on the same sort of type of topic. Like if you look at all these people, like I don't know, Galileo Galilei or Newton or people or all the philosophers, like huge contributions to our world. It's like like for some of the first academies, for example, in Plato and Aristotle and all those. Some of them were private and they had all others by the state. Like first creation of something unique, something new. I mean, and scientists making breakthroughs like these I mentioned, and philosophers, but I mean also like, no, I don't have anything against Persians or Iranian people. I love the Iranian people, but the three, because I mean it's also about more heroic, like cutting clear, like classical. I mean the 300 guarding the destiny of the birth of European civilization is that's also something that's so, but that's usually not the thing you do these days, and so, but the interesting thing is to understand that the most highest ambition is not something to be definitely not something to be ashamed of. It's quite the opposite. You're ashamed of not having a reasonably high ambition or a very extreme high ambition. And I mean, You might say that aren't your the wax on your wings melting right now? Shouldn't you be sort of humble in life in the sense of not stretching too far? I mean, in the video I talked about earlier, I said, well, the Peter Thiel quote of that, he said that courage is in shorter supply than genius these days, which I sort of had a discussion about. But another, in the same sort of formulation of a sentence, you could say that I think that ambition is in shorter supply of in this world than, what should you call it, humbleness? No, not humbleness, but I don't know what to call it really. Well, cameras. Anyway, so yeah, I think a very ambitious life is an ethical duty, and I think that a normal life is actually something that to some level should inflict a bit of pain or of shame. Well, yeah, pain also perhaps, but I mean, because the world will stagnate otherwise. It would just plateau, and if it's plateaued, it's a hard thing to keep it up. You can't just, and that's probably the saddest thing about just a normal just occupation and work. When you're employed, it's usually the case you just rest back and roll your thumbs. You might be disciplined in your work, but the real sort of breakthrough, pushing through some new boundaries of what intellectual achievement or just what could be done. And I mean, this is hard to say because I do admire many companies and businesses that starts and stuff like that, but many of them, in my opinion, it's as if, is it really that impressive? Some of them, no, I'm super cocky when I say this, but I mean, some of them, even if they're extremely successful in what they do, it's about something that's quite trivial for many people. It's a good thing to have, it's nice, but it's like, where's the, yeah, and that might be sort of almost sort of a sad outlook, some people might say, but I mean, I think it's a good thing to not be satisfied with just the ordinary of, because this pushes you to contribute more to the world. So, and I don't think I have much more better way to end the video than that. I remember I forgot one thing, one of those things that astonished me, that I realized and was sort of hyped up and enthusiastic about bringing up, and I forgot it when I did the video, and it was on the topic of, I mentioned that I obviously don't have anything hostile to Iranians, I said, or Persians, and as a general thing, which is a deep important discussion, that I obviously don't have anything else, any people or ethnicities and such, and but many of these things are strained, to say the least, in today's world, extremely strained, and it's important to talk about and understand, and I won't go into all those things, but I said I admire the 300 Spartans defending the, what did I say, the birth of destiny of European civilization or something like that. And now when I'm actually content with my first cup of coffee of the day and the endorphins are still going, I guess, realize it's important to actually bring up that part, even though I've forgotten. And the part is that there are many angles to, many ways and angles you can tackle this discussion, and I won't go into the deepest realms and threads of this, but I do want to address it with a question that I asked myself for many years ago, after having a discussion or wrote basically. Don't remember what medium I first expressed the question, but the question is a very terrific to, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, to sort of get to the bottom of what a constructive sound. Shit, that was a bird very close. Perspective on these critical issues in these times, and it's important for our societies to function well together, and it's a very taboo topic in some sense, and that's why I approach it with a question, and the question happens to have many. Well, you guys can say there are many levels to it, and I can't answer for all the interpretations and say that it is with all the connotations is on purpose as you interpret the question or the answer to the question, but you have to think for yourself, and it also happens to be the case that there are levels to it that are quite funny in the circumstance of where I am today, very funny, and but also extremely serious. So depending on the dimension you digest this question, and in some sense it's quite obvious answer to me, and but the implications are important. So it's extremely serious, but also a, could say, fun question. But and so the question that I asked myself 7 years ago, that have some extra funny spin to it today, but also remains in the seriousness, is simply what's wrong with Legolas and Gimli.